Hi there, it's Nicole for Lawn Fawn, and today I am so excited to share that Lawn Fawn has come out with an add-on stamp set, the candy corn add-on, that goes with the How You Bean stamps and coordinating dies that were released a while back. So if you take the jar and any of the die images from the How You Bean stamp set, you can pair them with the candy corn add-on to create some kind of fall themed shaker cards if you want to use the shaker How You Bean components. All kinds of fun ways to add those candy corn inside of the jar. And I am going to actually just share the jar as an accessory for my card today. Now I am creating these awesome scallop frames with the new outside in stitched scalloped rectangles. These are fantastic. This is both the large and the small size. When die cut together, that scallop is actually going to hit the outer edge of a 5.5 by 4.25 inch standard A2 size card base. So you can't really use that outside stitched edge if you're using an A2 card. If you're doing something bigger, of course that's going to work. But when you use this, that scalloped edge will actually fit on the card base. So that's kind of the base that I'm going for here. This was die cut from some Nina's smooth white cardstock, no specialty cardstock at all. I wanted to share how awesome Distress Oxide inks blend even on standard cardstock, which I normally don't use with regular ink blending with the Distress inks, but the oxides are a little more forgiving. I like to lay out my components before I get started, so you can see I've got the How You Bean and the How You Bean candy corn add-ons all laid out here. I'm going to use the Misty, and I'm going to start out by stamping my greetings from the How You Bean candy corn add-on. I love this. There are a whole bunch of different ways to use the components here. I am going to use the I love you more than candy corn and then in parentheses, and I really love candy corn. I think it's just a really fun, really cute way to create a fall themed card. This is definitely a non-spooky card, just a little bit more whimsical, I guess. I also love that just like the regular How You Bean stamp set that had the jelly beans, this is a group of candy corn instead. There are 4 faces in the How You Bean candy corn add-on, and then all of those faces, I think there were 12 in the traditional or the first stamp set. So you can mix and match and add faces or not add faces. I really love that you can choose whether you want to add faces or not to those images. I stamped my greetings right along the top edge there of my background using Versamark ink, and I'm using the brand new Lawn Fawn white embossing powder. The embossing powder is fantastic. They just released 4 colors of embossing powder, so this is really great. A nice addition to the line, plus 2 glitters. So excited. Fantastic for shakers, fantastic for winter themed projects, holiday themed projects. I'm really excited to showcase those glitters as well. Once I've heat set the greetings, I'm going to do a little embossed resist for the background and then a little masked Distress Oxide inking. So first, the inside panel. I am going to mask off that outer white scalloped edge, and I like to just use a little post-it tape. That's going to keep that edge perfectly white. This also helps create the look of layers without all of the extra layers, which I think is really great. No additional paper needed. I'm going to be blending in Fossilized Amber and Spiced Marmalade Distress Oxide inks. The yellow up at the top, the orange down here near the bottom. I, of course, sped this up a little bit, so we're not sitting here watching me blend forever. But again, look how beautifully these blend, even on traditional white cardstock. So I think that's really awesome. I'm going to buff any ink off of my embossing so it's nice and bright white. Spritz it with water from a distress sprayer and then blot it dry. Peel off that masking paper and look at that beautiful masked image. Now I also have the frame. I'm going to do something a little different here by masking off not only that outer edge, but the inner edge too. So I'm only inking that inside rectangle, if that makes sense. So what's in between the two stitching lines. This is really creates a fun effect and a fun look for the card. Again, a little post-it tape. I'm going to copy the inking that I did for the background. So fossilized amber up near the top, maybe the top third. The rest of the outline or frame is going to be spiced marmalade. And I want to have those blend together seamlessly. Spritz it with water from a distress sprayer. Again, very, very light. I want it to match, so I went ahead and spritzed it, blot that dry, and then peel off all of that masking paper. And you're left with this awesome frame. So there is kind of what all of my background components are going to look like. And I'm ready to start working on coloring, stamping and coloring my images. The jar and the jar lid are from the How You Bean stamp set. The 2 candy corn pieces are from the candy corn add-on. Plus this candy corn image I'm going to stamp right there, right on the jar. I'm using Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink. This is a great ink for Copic coloring. I will speed through the Copic coloring as well. Very repetitious as far as so many candy corn images. So the yellow color combination is Y11, Y08, and Y19. The orange color combination, YR00, 04, and 09. And for the white tips of the candy corn, some cool grays and cool gray 001 and even a little 3 here and there for a little deeper, darker shadow. And I'm going to repeat this for all of the candy corn images. You could even do the different color combinations for different flavors of candy corn. I went with the traditional. That's my personal favorite. I love the color combination of yellow, orange, and white. So I stuck with that. And the way I'm going to customize all these candy corn is I am going to add faces to all of these with either faces from How You Bean Candy Corn Add-on or the How You Bean stamp set. I just love the whimsical look of the faces. They're one of my favorite things that Lawn Fawn does for some of their stamp sets. There's also a gumball one. There's many stamp sets now, but lots of different faces for the stamps, and I just think they're really cute, so clever, and they add a really fun touch. Now, once my candy corn's colored, I'm going to color in the glass jar, quote unquote, color it in. I want it to have a little bit of an aqua tint. This is going to add a nice contrast to the orange and yellows of the card. Also makes it a very non-spooky Halloween card. There is no ghosts. There are no witches. There is nothing spooky or scary about this. There's really nothing too spooky or scary about most of the Lawn Fawn images, but it still has that fantastic fall feel. Just really, really nice. I'm using BG 10, 11, 13, and I'm even going to use a little BG 18. A colorless blender helps create some light white spots in the design. And then the cool grays, with the addition of Cool Gray 6 for the lid for the jar. And I'm going to have it where it looks like the lid is laying off to the side and the candy corn is kind of spilling out, if you will. So once these are all colored, I'm going to die cut them with the coordinating How You Bean and How You Bean candy corn add-ons. Oh, first I'm going to add the faces. I apologize. Got a little bit ahead of myself. And I'm going to repeat some of the faces. I went ahead and did the little, kind of sad face on the candy corn that has a bite taken out of it. I knew I wanted to use that face there. I'm going to repeat some of the candy corn add-on faces. And once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and, for more variety, pull in some of the How You Bean faces for the rest of the candy corn. Also a note of interest, instead of using the Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, I have already done my Copic coloring. So anything I'm stamping here is on top of that. I chose to use the black licorice ink. And you might be thinking to yourself, black ink is black ink. The jet black ink is specially formulated for things like alcohol ink markers, like Copic coloring. The jet black, or the black licorice ink rather, is a nice dye ink. And for me, I feel like it's a little bit darker, deeper black. I don't feel like I have to stamp it one on top of another to get that deep, rich color. One stamped image is enough. You can see these faces are really nice. They have a lot of detail. They don't really have any of those faint areas that I think you sometimes get with the inks that you use for specialty markers. So that's why I chose to do it this way rather than stamping the faces first and then coloring over them. Like if the image came like that, I decided to go ahead and do it this way. It's so much easier to be able to pick the faces up and stamp them with an acrylic block than try to line them up with the MISTI and stamp them and then maybe have to stamp them one on top of another. I decided I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do the easy way where I just simply take an acrylic block and stamp the images one on top of another. I'm also using a little bit of Post-it tape to mask off anything that I need to, because some of these overlap and the face may not show up as well in the area, depending on where you want to stamp it. The face could just as easily be in the orange stripe as well. Just personal preference, whatever you want to do. I kind of like it in the yellow because a couple of these faces have a little tongue sticking out. And in that area, I am going to go ahead and take a red Copic marker and color in their tongues. That's one of my favorite things about that particular little face. Now here are those coordinating dies. I will go ahead and die cut these now. And then I'm going to do some finishing details. So here's the red marker for the tongue. I love these jar images and anything that's glass, really. I like to add a coating of glossy accents to that to really make it look like a glass. It's going to dry shiny and glossy, and I really love that whole effect. It does take a while to dry. And I'm going to tell you now, if you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, you probably saw this card had some issues. This image had to be redone 3 times. So while I'm using glossy accents, I did actually end up using Nouveau Crystal Glaze in my final card. There is no difference. There is no reason. It's just personal preference. The first card I messed up. I set a acrylic block on it and didn't realize it was not all the way dry. And part of the image came up and I had to redo it. The second one, a piece of paper fell into it when I was gone, like blew into it and dried into it. When I pulled it up, it was ruined. It was just a comedy of errors that day. So things happen. I'm glad I persevered. I'm glad I went ahead and finished the card because I really do love these images and I think it's really fun. I am stamping the label from How You Been on vellum. And then the greeting is actually from the Candy Corn add-on. I stamped these with Versamark and then heat embossed with that Lawn Fawn white embossing powder, and I'll die cut this with the coordinating label die. To adhere this very easily over the glass jar, and please make sure that it's completely dry, I would suggest, because it is a lot of liquid, and the Nouveau Crystal Glaze definitely, it needs to dry 24 hours before you touch it. The glossy accent's probably a little sooner. However, I think I'd still let it sit the 24 hours. I am going to go ahead and adhere it with the Xyron sticker maker right to the front of that glossy accents, and I'll show you that here in a second. I used the frame as a guide to adhere the center panel to a white top or side fold card base. And then I am using some foam adhesive squares. You could also use strips of foam adhesive if you want to. These are scrapbook adhesive, foam adhesive squares, and they're super low profile. So even though it's going to give dimension, it's going to be very, very low, which I really like. So it's going to still fit into an envelope easily. And it's only going to give you a tiny bit of dimension. This works especially well because I want to tuck some of my images kind of underneath that edge. And if it was laying flat with the frame, it makes the frame kind of bow up a little bit along that bottom edge, and I don't really like that look. So I like having a little foam adhesive underneath that edge, and it's really going to help disguise the fact that the glass jar now has quite a bit of dimension because it has glossy accents, as well as anything else that I want to tuck underneath that edge. So there is my little label that I've run through the Xyron sticker maker. Adhere my little jar along the bottom edge of the card, kind of tucked underneath like I was just talking about. The jar lid, I'm going to put some foam adhesive underneath parts of that as well. Part of it's going to overlap the jar, which is already sticking up, so it's not really going to need some foam adhesive under that. Just some regular adhesive will work. Tuck in those additional candy corn pieces around the seam, and my card is all finished. Thanks for joining me today for this How You Bean candy corn add-on card showcasing new stamps and dies from the Lawn Fawn Fall and Winter 2017 release. The supplies I used are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos featuring Lawn Fawn stamps and dies that you might be interested in. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.